Hi, all you curious cats! It's me, Stiggy, bringing you another information-packed video. Now, we know obviously some of you might be well versed with this information, but I can assure you there are some people who will find this very interesting. We start this off by going back to 1585, when Sir Walter Raleigh established the first English settlement in North America as a military outpost. Great way to make friends and establish connections, said no one ever. Alas, they had evacuated a year later in 1586. Act 1, done. Thank you so much for joining this week's episode. We cannot wait to see you in the next one. Kidding. Starting Act 2, we followed the venture of 120 English settlers sailing over to Roanoke Island in July 1587, now known as North Carolina. It is here we meet John White, the governor of this colony, with his flashy beard that would put any man in the 21st century to shame in the month of Movember. Explorer and artist John White was soon exposed to a new skill in the art of combat, as some Native Americans would launch a few small attacks on this new arrival within their first month. It is here that we think that the military outpost first might have had some rippling effect, leaving a bad taste in the mouths of the Native Americans whenever seeing the English flag and colors. The colonists, in desperate need of more supplies after their separate encounters, asked John White, the man of the hour, to return back to England to retrieve some food, tools, and more people. So on August 25th, 1587, a month after arriving, White began the journey back to England to stock up, leaving behind approximately 115 colonists, 87 men, 17 women, and 11 children, including his own daughter, Eleanor White Dare. Eleanor White Dare had also just given birth to John White's granddaughter, Virginia Dare, before traveling back to England. We personally feel that Eleanor's husband, Mr. Dare, was very pleased not having his father-in-law around to raise his child the way he and Eleanor intended to. Act 3. We see John White's luck, like most artists, turning to the worst, as it would take him 3 whole years to return to where he left his family and colony. With poor timing, John White returns to England on the verge of war with Spain. Now let's not forget about Spain's strong armada in this time period. It is not until 3 years later, in August 1590, that John White was finally able to start making his way back to his colony. But what will he find once he arrives? Well, what he found was nothing. No kids, no adults, no tents, nothing. Well, I guess nothing is a strong word to use, as there was one clue left at the scene of nothingness. Carved out in a big tree was a single word, Croatoan, as well as on a nearby fence post, Croa, and attempts to finish writing the same word. John White then managed to borrow a privately owned boat to travel 50 miles south to where Croatoan Island can be found, now known as Hatteras Island, to search for his colony. However, it seems like more bad luck would strike, as both trips were foiled by storms, forcing him to turn back. He was unable to make a third attempt, as the owner of the boat, probably tired of having to repair the boat, refused to lend it to White again. After a while, John White decided to return to Europe. It is there where he decided to move to Ireland as his last grand voyage, as he passed away in Ireland in 1593, never knowing what happened to his family. To this day, it is not known for certain what had happened to this colony of 115 people. No bodies or signs of a mass grave have ever been found. There have been multiple historians theorizing what could have happened in the many years that have passed since then. With the age of the internet blowing over the world, a lot of people have theorized that something supernatural might have been at work. We have put together a numbered list of all the popular theories. Let us know down in the comments if you know of any other theories and would like to share. 1. Killed by one of the native tribes. The settlers met a grim fate at the hands of a local Native American tribe. Before this, the English gave Roanoke Island a shot back in 1585 to 1586, only to hightail it back to England after some unfriendly encounters and empty pantries. The first colony's governor, Ralph Lane, wasn't exactly the poster child for peace talks. He even went as far as killing the local tribal king, Wingina, to squash any rebellion. This ruckus called for Sir Francis Drake to swoop in like a hero and whisk the settlers back home. Fast forward a year to 1587, when a new group of English adventurers reappeared on the scene, only to vanish into thin air, leaving behind no mass graves or evidence of a large-scale disappearance. Spooky, right? 2. Mass abduction by aliens. Some folks think aliens might be the culprits behind the mysterious vanishing act of the colonists. If Croatoan was their version of a breadcrumb, why didn't they leave a cheat sheet or a treasure map? Maybe they bolted from the island faster than a cat on a hot tin roof, not exactly by choice. And what if that sneaky symbol on the map isn't a fort, but an intergalactic parking spot? If true, it's the kind of secret you'd keep tucked under your hat. Honestly, this theory isn't even the weirdest one out there. 3. Zombie plague. A theory from the Zombie Research Society suggests that a zombie outbreak and subsequent cannibalism occurred among the Roanoke colony. This sparked many stories, ranging from mind-consuming viruses to the yellow-eyed demon. Thanks, Supernatural. This particular theory suggests that some members contracted a virus or some similar affliction that drove them to madness and a craving for brains or human flesh. Unfortunately, there was no Crazy Dave to save them this time, no pea shooter plant, and no zombie-stomping lawnmower to stop them. Everything devolved into complete cannibalistic chaos. After exhausting all available fresh flesh and brain bolognese, our human-hungry hooligans simply decomposed into the earth, succumbing to starvation. The theory suggests that the lack of human remains is due to a combination of factors. First, cannibalism by the zombies, and then the decomposition of the bodies themselves over time. This would make for a great story, but we know when John White returned to Roanoke in 1590, there was absolutely no sign of a struggle, and there were definitely no bodies. Surely if a zombie apocalypse a la Resident Evil broke out, there would have been bodies, or at least remains. The lack of remains, and the time to decompose entirely, suggests that this theory is very unlikely to be true, or accurate at all. 4. Colonists did travel inland, and not to Croatoan. It is also theorized by some that the lost colony was unable to make it to Roanoke, which makes sense because if you have a look at the map, they are essentially on an island, and the locals, as previously established, are not on the best of terms with the colonists. We also know at this point that White took the boat to travel back to England, so maybe, just maybe, the colonists got desperate enough after far too many attacks and waiting too long for John White to return that they fancied a bit of a swim. Now looking at the map again, you can clearly see that swimming from Roanoke to Croatoan might not have been such a good idea. Maybe they traveled more inland. Now if you don't know, John White, the governor of Roanoke, was an artist as well as part of the original failed Roanoke expedition. And between 1585 and 1593, he created a detailed watercolor map that he titled La Virginia Pars. On this map, it does show the North Carolina coast, Roanoke and Croatoan Islands, which are colored red. It has been speculated by museum experts as the most carefully detailed piece of cartography for any part of North America to be made in the 16th century. Even when being compared to modern satellite imagery of the same area, with one minor difference, are the changes to the coastline that occur naturally over time. If you would take a quick gander upon this map, it would appear to be a plain old map, but on closer inspection, it seems that there is more secrets to be found. We are sure Benjamin Franklin Gates would have loved to get his hands on this map and uncover all of its secrets. The year of 2012, we do finally uncover more secrets, all thanks to a non-profit organization called the First Colony Foundation. The patch found on the southern part of the map just had slight modifications made that had been altered from the original drawing. The northern patch, however, had something interesting to find. It concealed a large red and blue four-pointed star, which is believed by historians to indicate a fort. There was also faint traces of the symbol found on the surface of the patch. According to the British Museum's report, while the detailed interpretation of the symbol is beyond the scope of the study and is best left to experts in the field, it seems certain to represent a fort or fortification, which could indicate that the colony might have been able to resettle on the western side of Albemarle Sound. The British report also states that one other possible, if rather romantic, explanation is that these lines could reflect the use of an invisible ink that can only be revealed if certain circumstances were met, usually applying heat as demonstrated in the film National Treasure. This invisible ink could be made by commonly used kitchen items today, like milk or lemon juice. It brings the question, though, that if this fort was indeed hidden, why all the secrecy? Some speculate that John White was trying to hide the colony's location from the English court, which was possibly hiding spies. Whatever the marks indicate, it is believed by some that this evidence supports the idea that the settlers could have left Roanoke Island for this inland location. It is also interesting to note that John White himself reportedly made an oblique reference to location 50 miles inland from Roanoke Island in his account of what happened when he returned. There have been excavations on the mentioned site that turned up evidence of the Europeans, including aglets, which is a copper tube used before the early 17th century to secure wool fibers, and Surrey, Hampshire borderware, a type of ceramic that was discontinued after Jamestown in 1624. These items are the best indication of tying the location to the Roanoke colonists, though these items can unfortunately not be dated to the exact same time frame. Even with all of this evidence, there are still many possible unanswerable questions. Two of them being, why did they leave Roanoke Island? And what happened to them afterwards? 5. Joined and assimilated a native tribe. The English settlers decided to play a game of survival hide-and-seek by joining a local Native American tribe. Enter Manteo, the globe-trotting Native American ambassador who had a two-way ticket to England back in 1584 and even made a second year-long jaunt between the Roanoke expeditions. He sailed back to Roanoke with John White and the new colonists in 1587, all cozy on their lengthy Atlantic cruise. Upon their arrival, Manteo got baptized, and John White knighted him as the chief of the Roanoke and Croatoan tribes. But here's the kicker, Manteo was only Croatoan, not Roanoke. So he couldn't exactly boss them around. Off he went back to Croatoan Island, possibly returning to whisk the colonists away for a tropical retreat. Fast forward to 1888, when 54 Croatoan Native Americans popped up, waving to Congress, claiming to be remnants of the Lost Colony. The Ethnological Bureau chimed in with, "Hey, we spotted some gray eyes in your crew," suggesting some colonists might have been adopted into the tribe. In 2015, archaeologists unearthed a treasure trove on Hatteras Island, a Croatoan hangout, broken English bowls, a fancy sword hilt, a writing slate with what may have been an M, and aglets, which are fancy shoelace tips. The sword and slate screamed 16th century English nobility. But wait, most artifacts were from the 17th century, a century after the Roanoke Vanishing Act, The Croatoan carving left by the settlers might have just been a breadcrumb trail for the curious, pointing to their coastal escape plan. Recent research has pointed towards the last two of our theories that were mentioned, with some of them actually making it to Roanoke and some moving more inland with other tribes and assimilation. There is even a replica of the kind of ship they were traveling on, which is now close to where they made their historic landing. Archaeologists found some artifacts from the Roanoke settlers mixed with the Native Americans on Hatteras Island, once called Croatoan. These items, as previously listed, were of British blacksmithing, when and where it shouldn't have existed. Other evidence shows some colonists moving inland and joining other Native American tribes found close to the Chowan River, blending in and just surviving, leaving one of the biggest mysteries of our world finally with some answers. We believe that John might have lied about his 2 trips that were foiled by storms and actually did find his family, but did not want to attract any unwanted attention to them, as they already barely made it out alive due to the Native Americans from Roanoke past experiences, with Ralph Lane's previously bad-made choices. Thanks for making it to the end of another one of our videos, and we hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, and hey, maybe consider subscribing to our Cult of Knowledge, and please don't be shy to let us know what you think down in the comment section, and we will be sure to hoo-hoo you back.